In today's video, we're going to tackle another Zentangle tile with two different tangles. And the tangles we're going to be using today, or the patterns, are going to be Jetties and Shattuck. And I'll show you how to draw each of those as we go. But first, let's get our tile ready. And we're going to draw a little border here first of all. So we'll start with 4 corner dots. I'm going about a 1/2 inch or so in so that we have some type of border with the tile when we're finished. And then let's just draw, connecting those dots. Let's draw our border. Now also with our pencil, I want to create a diagonal line between 2 of the corners. And then divide your tile in half with a little mark so that you can see in each direction that halfway point. Just makes it easier for what we're going to do. And now we want to draw another diagonal line parallel to this one, but in a little bit. I just use these halfway points as a guide. So let's go a little bit further, make it a little bigger. Bigger this way, but narrower this way. So we're coming about to that same space on each side of those marks. All right. So if you can see that all right, let's see if we can. Hopefully, sometimes with the light, it makes the graphite hard to see. But hopefully you can see that so that we've got our basic pattern. So now let's start with the first tangle that we're going to draw, which is Jetties, and we're going to draw it in each of these 2 corners. Grab my other pen here. And it starts with a simple orb shape, and then we'll enhance that with a second part of the tangles. So just follow with me here, and it's very easy to do. We're going to fill this entire area with the Jetties shape. So I start with a couple orbs to get my layout started. And you want to vary the size of the orbs, and the only advice I'll give here is draw a little bit bigger than you might think, because you're going to fill this area and it can take a while if you're drawing teeny tiny little shapes, but the variables do give a nice look to it, so the variable size. And I'm just randomly putting these orbs any place. Does not matter where they are or in what order they are. We just want to fill them in. As you can see, they're just touching each other, but not overlapping. And if you go slightly outside of the line, the border, or even this line here, that is completely fine. In fact, it might enhance our final effect a little bit if we have one that escapes and peeks out now and then. We also want to leave in some areas a little bit of white space peeking through purposely. So don't fill every single space. Leave a few areas that might still be open there. Okay, now that we've got that filled, let's add the second part to this tangle, which is creating a little curved line and then another little curved line, and we're going to ink in between that. So it creates draws a little band that goes through that orb, and by curving it, it helps enhance the round appearance of that shape. Now as you draw this, you might have some of these that are quite small, so you have to draw very carefully. But that was one reason I said to try not to draw super tiny. But if you have some super tiny ones, You might even just simply do a wider single line or a traced single line. And also try to alter the direction that these little bands are going, just because it will make the pattern more interesting to look at if they're not all going the exact same way. So it's a very similar tile to tipple, which is just the orbs. And tipple, of course, can be varied and drawn in a zillion ways. So someone might say technically this is tipple just with a variation. But this actually is a different named pattern. And if you want to, you can even vary the pattern a little bit further by adding a thinner line alongside that band, like that. It just makes it look, a tiny bit different again. You can do that to all of them, or you can just do it to some of them. Or none of them. There we go. Now I think I have all of those on this side. And now let's do the exact same thing to this other corner. And when I say exact same thing, I mean the same pattern. It doesn't have to look exactly the same, of course. Or be arranged in the same way. Sometimes you can make it look a little more random by just putting down a few orbs in different areas and then connect them all as you go. So whatever works for you is completely fine. However you like to do it. Some people are very methodical. They start at one corner and just work their way over, and that's also completely fine. Okay, but it looks like Jetties is all done. So we're going to move to our second, and in this case, final pattern that we're going to do, which is called Shattuck. And we're going to draw it by starting with, right here in the center, we're going to draw two parallel lines right in the middle, or as close to the middle as we can get. And then we'll do the same thing in each of these corners, if you will, where those other pencil lines were that we drew, where they meet our border, we'll just add something right there. And I'll flip my tile and we'll do the same thing over here. Don't worry if they're not perfectly in place. There's no right or wrong to it. And now that we have that area divided, we're going to add the second part of this tangle, which is, we can draw it with either straight or curved lines. And I think in this instance, I'm going to use straight lines. So we're going to start down in this corner, and I'm going to draw right up to here where that pencil mark is. Just a straight line like that. And now going a little ways from that, I'm going to aura that or draw a parallel line to that and just create some additional lines to fill in this space. Just like that. And now what I want to do is I want to mirror these lines by going right here down like that, and then I'll start right across from here so that my lines are roughly the same dimension, or thickness, or spacing, or however you would like to think of that. Just like that. And now with that in place, we'll draw the second line. So we're going to start at the top of this line, and we're going to draw right up to the corner here. And now we'll draw a series of lines moving in that opposite direction, opposite of these, in other words. We're just alternating the direction of these lines to make an interesting pattern. And like I said, you could draw these with curved lines as well, where you, instead of straight, this would have curved, and that creates even a different effect. So now again, we'll go from here right to this upper corner. And then I'm going to flip mine back now that I have that there. And I want to try to draw some parallel lines here, roughly the same spacing as we've been using. And it's interesting when you work with patterns like these over and over again in different contexts, that just subtle alterations with the spacing, the line thickness, the curve or straightness of the line, etc., will dramatically change how that pattern looks. And so now here, we want to use these lines to go in the opposite direction of the, just like, I should say that better. Just like we mirrored here, we want to mirror here. So you can start a line, if it helps, to get started in an area that's not completely open, so you can't see exactly everywhere where that pattern will go, and that can help you to start making filling that area with a little more confidence that way. I don't know if I said that very well. I guess I'm stammering a bit today, but just because it's hard to know exactly where I'm going to start. Now in this case I can see that, so I could have gone like this. But when you couldn't see it, you start with a middle one and try to duplicate the pattern from there. Just like that. And now we need to do these areas. So our lines are going to go in that opposite direction, but we can't really pattern them from anything. So we have to just do it on its own, but try to duplicate the line spacing again. So we'll go like this. And now we can use the other side to help guide us in terms of that pattern that we want to keep. That back and forth changing pattern. So there it is. That is the basic detail for Shattuck. Now let's grab our pencils and we'll add some shading. So first thing we want to do is I want to create some shade, a shadow, a drop shadow around the Jetties area, the entire area, not each individual one, but just that whole area that we've drawn in there. And we want to create a drop shadow that will separate these areas more, even more visually. So we'll just lay down some graphite that we can blend outward to help make that shadow. Just by doing that, it sort of lifts that. Let's zoom out so you can see the effect. If you compare this side versus that side, this side looks elevated or lifted to the front of our drawing, or to the top if you want to think of it that way. Now we could also do something with these white spaces. Some folks like to fill that in with black ink or even a different color. You could use your graphite and just add a light shadow in the background to make that a little more convincing, like it's not the same as the foreground. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just very lightly using the graphite that is already on my tortillon from the previous work we did, and just adding a very subtle hint of gray or shadow or difference in tonal quality to that background. Just very subtle. I still like that it's not completely black so that it conflicts with the darkness of each little jetty shape. And now let's do the same thing over here on this other side. Those two areas are basically done. Now, the way we shade Shattuck is very simple. Wherever we see lines that go or appear to go underneath another line, we'll add some graphite there. And also along these dividing lines that we drew. This will help create an over and under effect. Where a line appears to go over or under, we'll accentuate that with a little graphite shadow. So now that we've completed the tile for today, I wanted to show you a couple variations of the same layout, the same composition, where we use the same tangles and patterns, but just do them a little bit differently, just to show you how it can affect things. So I'm going to zoom out here, and I'll set these side by side, and you can see, so now on this one, and I did this very quickly just to illustrate it. So here I've created the Shattuck pattern going in two directions, and I used curved lines. So it does completely change the appearance of that center piece, and I made that piece a little larger, these a little smaller, and you can see that I did the jetties a little more light so that they're not as dark, there's not as much contrast, just to show you how that affects things when you do it very subtly different. I'll change this over here, or slide that over, and here's one more. It's the very same, it doesn't matter which way we orient it, very same drawing. This one has rounded patterns, again, rounded Shattuck, but they're going only in one direction as opposed to these two directions, so they're not straight like this one. And I also decided just to put a touch of color in it, almost like the red is bleeding outward from that point. So it affects this first piece of Shattuck and part of my lines here, but not all the way. So, and then I did ink in the white spaces here on this side, and I inked them in on this side as well, but with red, and made little details with red also, just to show that. So that's just an example of how very simple and subtle changes can make a really dramatic difference in the layout and the appearance of your tile. But thank you again so much for joining me. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care now. Bye-bye.